Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Vakratunda Mahakaya, Surya Koti Samaprabha, Nirvignam Kurume Deva, Sarvakareshu Sarvada. I meditate on Lord Ganesha, who has a curved trunk, large body, and who has the brilliance of million suns. O Lord, please make all our work free of obstacles, as always. Let's begin today's event with the bhajans by Kripa and her team.
Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Jagadamba Sudara Kshama, Jagadamba Sudara Kshama, Jagadamba Sudara Kshama, Jagadamba Sudara Kshama, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Sharanagara Kshama, Sharanagara Kshama, Sharanagara Kshama, Sharanagara Kshama, He Karunanidhi Pahima, He Karunanidhi Pahima, He Karunanidhi Pahima, He Karunanidhi Pahima, Shri Gananath Samrakshama, Shri Gananath Samrakshama, Shri Gananath Samrakshama, Shri Gananath Samrakshama, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Jagadamba Sudara Kshama, Jagadamba Sudara Kshama, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima, Sharanagara Kshama, Sharanagara Kshama, He Karunanidhi Pahima, He Karunanidhi Pahima, Shri Gananath Samrakshama, Shri Gananath Samrakshama, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Nija Bhakti Mudam Dehima, Jaya Lambodhara Pahima. Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada Mata, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada Mata, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada. Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada Mata. He Vidya Buddhi Pradayini, He Vidya Buddhi Pradayini, He Vidya Buddhi Pradayini, He Vidya Buddhi Pradayini, Mahina Pustakadarini, Mahina Pustakadarini, Mahina Pustakadarini, Mahina Pustakadarini, Bhavavanjani Manoranjani, Bhavavanjani Manoranjani, Bhavavanjani Manoranjani, Bhavavanjani Manoranjani, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari Mata, Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata. Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada Mata, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada Mata. He Vidya Buddhi Pradayini, He Vidya Buddhi Pradayini, Mahina Pustakadarini, Mahina Pustakadarini, Bhavavanjani Manoranjani, Bhavavanjani Manoranjani, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata, Satya Saishwari Mata. Namo Sharada, Namo Sharada Mata.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a beautiful sunny day it has been so far. My name is Venkat, I'll be your MC. Indeed, it is an immense pleasure to be hosting this event, and I'm thankful for Rajan for giving me this opportunity to be in front of you today. I hope you all are having a good day and geared up for the spring break. On behalf of the entire team here, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you and express our sincere appreciation for being with us today. Believe me, you made the right choice. We feel extremely honored by all your august presence. Our special warm welcome to our chief guests, Dr. Jacques Fasson and Dr. Pamela Winfield. We are also privileged today to have Morrisville Town Council members, Mr. Steve Roth and Satish Garimalla, with us today. And also we have representatives from various organizations, friends, musicians, volunteers, Kids, a warm welcome to all of you. Well, as you all know, today we have gathered for the music launch of Ashtavakra Gita. This effort, as Rajan puts forth, is a humble attempt. Well, it's not, but he claims that it is a humble attempt at creating the first ever, I repeat, it's the first ever musical form for Ashtavakra Gita. So to be more precisely, the first chapter of Ashtavakra Gita, which is perhaps the most prominent philosophy written in poetic Sanskritam, and we date it between 400 BC and 700 AD closely, and which doesn't have any known musical forms for the first chapter, as I mentioned. And the first chapter is, they call it as self-realization. So therefore, I really take pride in mentioning that this is truly a historical event today. The Ashtavakra Gita itself, as one of the interpreters delineates, it's a spiritual document for those who are new to or who do not know what Ashtavakra Gita is all about. It's a spiritual document of great purity and power. Pure because it is relentlessly one-pointed, as he mentions beautifully. Every word is aimed at triggering self-realization, no suggestions for self-improvement, no rules for moral behavior, and no practical wisdom for daily life. And he also mentions that it is powerful because the mere reading or of repeated reading, it can be enough to send a right mind towards the truth. So with that note, with that brief note on this event, let me call upon Raj and Somasundaram to introduce our chief guests, Dr. Jacques Fusson and Dr. Pamela Winfield.
Very happy to see our chief guests here, and thanks for all of you to come here, and council members, thank you for your presence. Let me just take a couple of minutes and introduce our chief guests here. In the religious study circle, I can proudly say Jacques and Pam do not need an introduction. They are a celebrity couple that have dedicated their life for the cause of research in philosophy. And I'm fortunate to know them for the last 5 years, I guess. 5 years. And every conversation I have with them is a learning for me. There are so many things that they know of, and I sometimes used to joke, Jacques, is there something that you do not know? Just a quick introduction. Dr. Jacques Fusson is teaching at the Burlington School right now. Earlier, he was a visiting faculty at Duke University and Wake Forest. So you can read what is there, but what is stunning for me is that a couple of years back, when I was having a conversation with him, I was actually reading a story on King Wilbur, and I didn't know who that person is until I read that story. But when I was talking to Jacques, he was asking, what are you reading now? I told him that I'm reading a story about Ken Wilbur. And then he went on and talked about Ken Wilbur, what is he, and what are his inspirations, and what are the things that he's doing, and he was talking about Neo Vedanta and so on. And I thought, I do not even know this person, I do not even know what he did, but there seems to be a complete history behind that person, and Jacques is already aware of that. He doesn't even have to Google. He himself is like a Google. Anything that's related to spirituality, he is like a walking encyclopedia. You can just go and talk to him for hours and hours. And he is my, big idea guy. I can just go to him and talk about any of the big idea that's happening here. He will have hours and hours of things to talk about. And the other thing is, he talks about all those things in such an interesting way that it sounds like an entertainment. That's normally a rare thing, normally when people talk about philosophical things and other things, that doesn't sound like entertainment. But Jacques and Pam, they have the rare ability of making anything as an entertainment, even if it's about philosophy. Let me also introduce Pam. Pam He is an associate professor of religious studies at Ilan University, and her book, Icons and Iconoclasm in Japanese Buddhism, has been awarded the winner in the Southeastern Conference of the Association of Asian Studies. And I think recently there was another book that has been released, and that's called Zen and Material Culture. And Bang presented her research at the 18th World Congress of International Association of Buddhist Studies. So we are honored to have such guests who are experts and who have dedicated their life for philosophy. Thank you very much for taking time and coming over here. May I request our council member Steve Rao to speak a few words. A couple of things about Steve Rao. He is the longest serving Indian American, and we are glad to have Steve Rao here.
I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Garamella, for being here with me. He's the true first Indian American elected who was born and brought up in India, and I'm very proud to serve with him. He's doing a great job for the town of Morrisville. So we welcome our distinguished guests, and Rajan and Ramesh and the team here. It's just an honor for us to have this wonderful event in Morrisville to celebrate Ashtavakra Gita. And, you know, my thoughts are that this whole concept of connecting all life with nature, that strong connection that we have, of equality, of unity, of peace, is such a very important message that we need to share with all of Morrisville, the Triangle, all of North Carolina. It's a very divisive time. Councilmember Garland and I attended a few of the gun walkouts recently that was organized by our students. And during one of those walkouts, I actually talked about the Star Wars movies, and everyone looked at me like, why is he talking about that? But this whole concept of this divine force within us that connects us, that binds us, that makes us, even during dark times, bring light to the world. And I think that's a very, very important message that we celebrate and honor with music today. So I really want to thank you for putting this together. And to close out, just, you know, recently, during one of our council meetings, Councilmember Garamella and I were discussing with our council the great diversity we have in Morrisville and the Triangle. And Satish brought up a very good point that really hadn't been brought up before, is how important it is to share this kind of diversity with everybody. And so he and I will take it upon ourselves to spread the word of this wonderful organization and the kinds of things we're doing. And this whole notion of peace and unity, we want to share with everybody in Morrisville, everybody in the Triangle. And over the next few years, he and I are going to work together to try to build more of that kind of international community where we can learn from all cultures in Morrisville. And we are one of the most diverse towns in North Carolina. So on that note, I just, on behalf of our mayor and our council, we just want to thank you for being here in Morrisville. And I want to thank you for taking the time, and I want to thank all the wonderful performers. And we're just honored to be graced here to be your guests. And thank you very much. So welcome to Morrisville.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks a lot. So, thank you, Rajan, for introducing our esteemed chief guests. It is indeed a blessing and a privilege to have both of you here today with us. Shubham karoti kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadaha shatru buddhi vinashaya deepa jyotir namostute. I fold my hands before the light that brings prosperity, auspiciousness, good health, abundance of wealth, and destruction of darkness, by destruction of which one attains high levels of knowledge and wisdom. Light is a universal symbol of truth, knowledge, and understanding. It acts as a guide, keeping us from stumbling in the dark. Knowledge removes ignorance, just as light removes darkness. With those thoughts in our minds, may I call upon our chief guests on the stage to inaugurate this beautiful event by lighting the divine lamp. May I also request Ramesh and Rajan to accompany them. Thank you. It is the best of all trades to make songs, right? We all love music. And the second best thing is to sing them. So now may I call upon our lead singer, Ramesh Chellamani, to share his experiences on this great endeavor.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for being here to encourage all of us at this event. I'd like to start by saying I will not end this by saying last but not least, I'd like to thank my friends and family. So you guys make this happen. You guys create the environment which influence our thought, and thoughts are what define us. So it's all of you here together, the energy that you bring together that has made this event possible, that has made the music possible, everything possible. So I do feel that we are all connected at some level, and I'd like just to talk about a few words. A friend of mine, he forwarded a video a few weeks back. A simple topic. It says how we are all connected. It does not go into philosophy. It talks about science, and it points out to three aspects in that video, which highlight how we are all connected at a level. Yeah. The first one he talks about is heart. The heart pumps blood throughout the body, and there is a iron atom in the hemoglobin that is crucial in carrying the oxygen all through our bodies, right? And this iron molecule, the only way the iron can form is through a supernova, when the stars explode. So we all have iron molecules in our blood that makes us live and that takes oxygen all through our body. So that way we are connected through the heart. Second, it talks about breath. The air we breathe, the oxygen that we breathe. 3 billion years ago, the earth did not have, it had 0.05% of oxygen in the atmosphere. This small blue-green algae in the ocean invented the process that took carbon dioxide in and converted into oxygen. It took 2 billion years for that blue-green algae to saturate the atmosphere with oxygen, and that has fostered all the life that we see around us. So the breath that we take in and breathe out, it's because of this small blue-green algae that came into existence 3 billion years ago. So that is number 2, heart, right? So we are connected in the breath because of the breath we take, which has been fostered by the blue-green algae. Number 3, he talks about the mind. How the mind progresses through different generations. They talk about an example where piano was invented in 1700s, and since that time, when you look at a virtuoso or somebody who's learned piano, playing the piano, and look at the brain waves, you can see pathways in the brain that have gotten highlighted, or new pathways that have been created because of the repeated playing of the instrument. So prior to 1700, before the piano was invented, those pathways were not there. So after 1700, going forward, these new pathways have been created. So every lifetime, every generation that lives, leaves behind something that the rest of the generation carries through, and it is contributing towards the evolution of humankind. So we are connected in a scientific term, in scientific terms, not just philosophy. So it just adds to the fact that all that the scriptures, the olden scriptures talk about with regards to all of us being connected is true even from a scientific point of view. So those 3 things I wanted to highlight, and then talk about Ashtavakra Gita. I'm very honored to have worked with Rajan. When he called me and asked me if I can be a part of it, the first thought that came through my mind was gratitude. Then the apprehension if I would be able to contribute to his expectations. I think it has turned out to be a very fruitful journey for me. The effort itself was a mammoth effort, and one slokam from the Bhagavad Gita comes to mind. Karmanyeva dhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana na karma phalaheturbhur matur kadachana. So what it says is, do your duty with passion. You're not entitled to anything just because you're doing the duty. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results that come out of your action. So that saying has a deep meaning, right? You work on something with passion. If you get success through it, don't let it get to your mind. If you get failure through it, don't let it bog you down. So keep marching, work with passion in whatever you do. Some advice for the kids: select an area to work on which you're passionate about. So that will move you forward with a lot of grace and blessing. Thank Rajan again, and thanks to all of you for coming here and encouraging us. And I'd like to hand over the mic to the chief guests here to educate us on the philosophy of the Advaita and the Ashtavakra Gita. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh, for sharing your experiences. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Meva Vashishyate Isha Vasya Midam Sarvam. Ladies and gentlemen, Vedas and Upanishads provide many such several Mahavakyas, or the great sentences, which relate to the Advaitic theme that broadly translates into the inner self and the universe is connected and one and the same. Without much further ado, I am handing over the mic to Dr. Jha.
All right. First of all, I just want to say I can't, it's really hard to follow that introduction by Rajan. I will try to make this as entertaining as possible, but as he said, philosophy, usually you don't go to a philosophy lecture, you tend to think of falling asleep. So I wanted to make this as entertaining as possible, but I also want to do a little justice to the material. So I'm going to start, I'm just going to say a few things about myself. I'm going to talk kind of a general thing about philosophy and what that means, and then a little bit about the text itself that Rajan has put to music. I was trained as an academic. I teach, I've taught for a long time. I like to just kind of go off the cuff when I teach, but for this occasion, I'm kind of going the academic route, and I've actually prepared a paper. So bear with me, I may go off script, but I have something here which I will mostly read. So bear with me if you will. Okay. Okay, first I'd like to say that Pam and I are very honored that Rajan has invited us to this joyous occasion. As those of you who know him are aware, Rajan is a man of both boundless talents and boundless energy. Not only is he an accomplished IT professional, but also a musician and a composer. Both of us feel blessed that we've had the fortune to know Rajan and his family for these past 5 or so years, and we continue to be amazed by all that he does. While I was flattered that Rajan has asked us to present, I must admit to facing a rather daunting challenge. While Pam and I have both studied Indian thought and spent time in various parts of Asia, India and Nepal, our specific area of expertise is actually Japan. However, Rajan insisted, and we have agreed to accept the challenge. He is a hard man to refuse, as those of you that know him. And we've decided to play to our respective strengths and go at it like this. As I said, I will present some initial comments on philosophy, and Pamela will conclude with some reflections on music and its relationship to spiritual awakening. Our specific concern here is not to present a detailed overview of Indian thought or Advaita Vedanta, but rather to provide some preliminary observations in order to provide an entry point into Rajan's glorious music, which is the reason why we are all here. Okay, so philosophy. Since I cannot claim to be an expert on classical Indian thought, do this one. There it is. Okay, I am not going to try. I will not attempt to go through all the complex combinations and permutations of Indian thought. How many of you are familiar or have studied kind of classical Indian thought in detail? Okay, so you're familiar with all of the pramanas, the arguments, the genealogies, the lineages. I mean, it's incredibly complex. I'm not going to do that right now. Rather, I'm going to present to you, in as brief a fashion as possible, one way of making sense of philosophy in general, and of the Ashtavakra Gita in particular, and hope that it will be of some use to you. To oversimplify a bit, when you're talking about philosophy, there are two general ways to think about it. What I call an inside-out approach and an outside-in approach. We're all familiar with what I'm calling the outside-in approach. This approach starts with material objects that are out there, enter into your consciousness and help you make sense of the world. The inside-out approach, by contrast, starts with the mind within, with consciousness itself, and recognizes that our senses sometimes mirror but sometimes distort the things that are out there. So the focus is really on the mind, and this is the focus of the Ashtavakra Gita as well. More specifically, in terms of the more familiar outside-in approach, when you want to know something or to discover something new, what do you do? Well, if you're like me, you Google something, right? I actually do use Google. I'm not a walking Google encyclopedia. I'd like to be, but I'm not. So you Google something. Or perhaps you try to figure it out on your own. You make something. I often try to make inventions with my sons. Sometimes they work well. Sometimes they don't always work out. As when my son wanted me to make him a jetpack with liquid nitrogen. That didn't go well. These don't always work out. However, if you're trained in the sciences, like Rajan, and you have actual skills, again like Rajan, you can be a bit more sophisticated. So, you devise a hypothesis, perhaps a program, and then you test it. By trial and error, you can arrive at correct information. This is basically taking the world that's out there, working with it to gain knowledge. Now, the job of the philosopher is to take what seems simple and obvious and make it complicated. Right? Or to take what is obvious and somehow get people to question it, right? Philosophy is really good training for lawyers. I apologize for this next slide. My father was a law professor for many years. My father-in-law is a lawyer right now, so I'm glad he's not here with us today. For those of you who are lawyers, I'm sorry, I just kind of want to get a funny slide. But anyway, philosophers are going to try to flip this outside-in approach. The philosopher looks at this way of getting knowledge, what's called in fancy terms an epistemology, and breaks it down to its assumptions, right? The philosopher just cannot let it be and says, this whole process assumes a bunch of stuff here. Let's do this slide. Okay. What does this outside-in approach assume? At its basic level, the outside-in approach assumes there's a subject, people like you and me, that have sense organs, we get experience, and there's a mind that somehow takes it in and gets knowledge. The outside-in approach further assumes that there's a world of things or objects out there that exist independently, separately from the thinking self, right? From me. There's things that are out there, and we experience them. Things somehow exist out there and then come into our minds. And that's why I'm calling it the outside-in approach. The philosopher, however, always the troublemaker, notices some problems with this outside-in approach. First of all, how can we know something about these objects that exist completely separately from us? Right? Further, how do we really know what exists outside of us at all? All we really have are a bunch of sense organs that convey electrochemical signals to our brains, which then in some fashion, which we don't fully understand, rearranges them into coherent thoughts and images. Right? And we assume that these accurately reflect what's out there. Now, if any of you have studied physics or neuroscience, you know that that's not true. We're often deceived, right? The senses are deceiving. What we really have are electrical impulses, right? So philosophers say, well, this outside-in has a lot of big assumptions, right? And in fact, the philosopher would say, does it make a whole lot more sense to start with what is most clearly known to us? What is most immediate? What is most clearly us? Why not bypass these middlemen, our sense organs, the body, right? Instead of the objects that seem to be out there, why not start with the subject in here? And thus, a whole new approach to knowledge, the inside-out approach, is born. Okay. Now, I said I was going to be brief. and was going to get to the point of Rajan's music. But instead, I've gone off on this whole tangent here about philosophical points of view and gotten you, or at least I hope I have gotten you, to begin to doubt what seems to be quite obvious.
Thank you so much for having us. This is quite a privilege and honor to be here today. I'm going to be much briefer than my husband, I promise. But thanks, babe. That was great. Okay, so I just would like to add a few remarks on the Ashtavakra Gita and maybe to consider the emancipatory or the liberatory potential of music, especially in the Indian tradition. So let's go back to the text, right? That's what we always tell our students, go back to the text. So the Ashtavakra Gita takes the form of a dialogue, right, between the king Janaka and the sage Ashtavakra. The story is that Ashtavakra, which literally means apparently 8 curves, is that right? Okay, so Ashtavakra maybe has some spinal deformities, right? He has 8 curves or something, okay? So he was born with physical deformities. When Ashtavakra approached the king to inquire about difficulties that his father had gotten into, the courtiers all begin to laugh. At which point the sage then also begins to laugh as well. And when the king asks him, what he had to laugh about, Ashtavakra replies, "It was so funny that all the court believed that the self was limited to the physical body." Aha. Realizing his advanced nature, King Janaka becomes Ashtavakra's disciple. The song of Ashtavakra, right, the Ashtavakra Gita, is an extended poem in which the sage provides spiritual advice to the king. Now, as we were listening to Rajan's composition through Ramesh's powerful rendition, one can hear echoes of the original story throughout. The higher-pitched background voices at the beginning and the end seem to us, at least, to reflect the laughter of the initial encounter between king and sage. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of what we were going with. And while the whole piece as a whole is in this form of dialogue. The chorus, which is plaintive and beseeching, is the constant request of the king, "O master, tell me how to find detachment, wisdom, and freedom." The first verse of the text, but which Rajan has now skillfully woven throughout the extended narrative. The music is meditative but insistent, and it's propulsive, right? In the background, the beat of the music is ever present, and for that, I think we have to applaud the tabla players. The matter at hand is a serious one, and it's not to be taken lightly. The music puts one into a meditative state, with the listener taking the part of the king, right? And listening to the vocalist as the sage guide Ashtavakra uses different strategies to lead the listener on the spiritual journey present in the text. And I understand from Rajan that there were 20 different forms that the poetry took, and you had to come up with 20 different melodies and stitch them all together and make this magnificent composition a whole, and nevertheless cohesive, which is extraordinary. So the text of the Gita reaches a peak in a couple of places, which also appear in the music. The first is when the injunction appears to know you are one, pure awareness. This occurs almost at exactly the half point of the piece, and here the music becomes serious. The other point is about 2/3 of the way through, when the text reads, "Meditate on this, I am awareness alone, unity itself." There's an uplift with Ramesh's soaring, climbing vocals. The piece ends with the claim that the timeless, all-pervasive one exists in all life forms as a totality, with the classic analogy of the clay jar in which the space within is the same as the air without, right? So it's all one, right? Here the vocal is doubled, and the piece reaches quietude and harmony, just as Atman reaches salvation in its union with Brahman. In this manner, Rajan and Ramesh's composition is an extended mantra of sorts, where sound is the vehicle to understanding, not vision as we often think of it. The creative power of sound is at the heart of all creation and all wisdom. And this made me think of, actually, the goddess Vaj. And here I'm showing you an image from Sita Sings the Blues. If you haven't seen it yet, it's online. It's hilarious. It's kind of a remake of the Ramayana from Sita's perspective. So little gender bit there. But anyway, here we have the goddess Vach emerging from the primordial waters as she speaks the world into existence, right? And ever since she has spoke the world into being, her alphabet of recombinant forms, right, has continually spelled out meaning in different ways for all eternity. And this is why the most sacred texts in the Hindu tradition are all Shruti, right? It's that they're heard, right? They're heard wisdom. That indicates the eternal truth for all who can hear it. This sacred speech is authored by no one. It's anonymous, but it's applicable. It's accessible to all who have ears who can hear it. I feel that Rajan has just made it easier for us to hear it now, and for that, we thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pam and Jack, for those enlightening speeches. Now is the moment, or the most awaited moment of the evening. We will launch the music by releasing the CD, and may request our chief guests and all the musicians to arrive here so that we could release the replica of the CD. All the musicians as well who took part in this great endeavor, may I call upon everybody? Yeah. Everyone, whoever was a part of, with all the great applause. This has been a tremendous effort and truly an enriching experience. Yeah, here is our chief guest launching the music of Ashtavakra Gita, first ever musical form of Ashtavakra Gita being released today in Morrisville. It's been such an honor and a great privilege and a blessing. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, musicians. Thank you, Chief. Dr. Pam, she made my life pretty easier because she spoke a lot about the music, which is very true, and it has been my personal experience as well. Thanks a lot, Pam. Although I knew about this great text earlier, until I started listening to this musical composition and, embellished by all this orchestration and voice of Ramesh, it has been a truly enriching experience. And that is the beauty of music, and of course genius of Rajan's musical abilities and mellifluous voice of Ramesh. And one particular verse of this first chapter was truly a blissful experience when I was listening. It goes like this: Ekam sarvagatam vyoma bahirantara yatha ghate nityam nirantaram brahma sarva bhuta gane tata. It translates loosely as, just as one and the same all-pervading space exists within and without the jar, so the eternal, everlasting God exists in all of us. And the music was so beautifully set with all those, the percussions, especially the rhythmic patterns and the percussions, because this particular verse talks about ghata. Ghata is nothing but, it's one of the, as you may all know, the Indian percussion instruments made of clay pot. And I could hear all those being embellished, when that particular verse is being sung. And it is such a personal, beautiful experience, and I was mentioning this to Rajan. And it was so encouraging and inspiring that my little kid, who is 7 years old, and now he's 8, maybe, pointing there. He was telling me that, I should sing all these, or we should set all the other chapters to music and also Bhagavad Gita. He was so inspired by that. So that is the power of Rajan's music. And okay, may I call upon now Rajan, the composer par excellence, to share his experiences of this Ashtavakra musical and also deliver his thank you note. Over to Rajan.
Thanks, Venkat. I just want to thank Venkat first because he is one person that whatever I compose, anytime my compositions are out, I think he doesn't do anything else. He keeps listening to my composition and then he would send me some messages which are amazing. For example, like the one that he mentioned, the very last line of the first chapter. It says about the jar example, the space inside the jar is same as outside the jar, just that there is a jar present, which is like our body. And I have intentionally used the ghatam instrument there, and I thought nobody would ever be able to notice, and he noticed it. He called me and said, "Is this the reason that you have prominently used the ghatam in that place?" I said, "Yes." And this is just one example. There are at least another 20 similar observations from him. And I'm so glad to have somebody like that who listens to music and keeps observing all those things and shares all those thoughts. And the last time I visited his house, his son was singing my composition. Thanks, Venkat. The question I kept getting is, why do you have to do this? Why do you have to compose for Ashtavakra Gita? I had two completely different tracks in parallel times that converge in creating a composition for Ashtavakra Gita. As I mentioned a couple of years back when we were talking to Dr. Hassan, we started talking about Naya Vedanta, and then I know about Naya Vedanta, but I didn't know much about it. And then he mentioned about Swami Vivekananda. And then he started talking about Vivekananda like he's a Google, right? Like a spirituality Google. He started talking about Vivekananda and so many other things. And I felt a little guilt in me because the name Vivekananda is something that I have been hearing since I was like, say, 5 years, 6 years old. And I know a lot of anecdotal incidents in his life, but I never actually read what he has said. I never read any of his books. So then I thought, this is bad, At least being a friend of Jacques, I should know what Vivekananda has said, and I thought I wanted to really read what something written by Vivekananda. When I was searching, I found that when Vivekananda himself went to his guru, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the very first thing that Paramahamsa taught Vivekananda was Ashtavakra Gita. That's the first time I heard about Ashtavakra Gita. So I thought, if this is the first thing, I was a student, I wanted to learn things, not up to the level of Jacques and Pam, and maybe at least something about this. So I found a book, I opened it, and it was hard for me. I didn't know Sanskrit. And for some reason, all the words got mixed up and it was very difficult, at least the first two things. So I stopped it there. In parallel, somewhere around the same timeline, at home I used to do some all-ups in the morning. My daughter used to say, "Why are you screaming all the time?" But I don't care. I used to do some all-up, random tangent, just do something. After about a couple of months, I realized that there is something common with all those all-ups. So one day I sat down, I tried to write down those notes, and then tried to identify which raga does it belong to. And then to my surprise, I couldn't find any raga that fits into. That was very intriguing. So I started doing some research about what are the all ragas that are existing in Carnatic and in Hindustani music. About 3-4 months I was reading all the books that talk about all the available ragas. And I still couldn't find which raga matches this. Then I thought maybe this is a new raga. That's how the raga Swadhyaya was born. And then I had so many thoughts around that raga, I had so many tunes in that raga, and I wanted to find a material for which I can compose to. Now, the other track of learning about new Vedanta and Ashtavakra Gita, and then I thought, maybe this is the thing. And then this time, I wanted to read, I wanted to understand what is there in Ashtavakra Gita. So I opened the book. I know it was hard, but there are so many different versions available as an interpretation. So I started going through each of those things. And then after like 2-3 readings, it just opened up. And I thought immediately how beautifully poetic it is. The words, how they have been combined together. It's so beautiful. And I was thinking this immensely beautiful poetry begs for a tune. So I thought, if it's already available, probably somebody would have composed it. So let me listen to the music so that, it's easy to read and easy to understand, easy to repeat it. And I kept searching. Some of my friends here, they also searched, and we couldn't find any known musical form for Ashtavakra Gita. Then I thought, okay, let's compose something for it. Now comes the challenge. As Pam mentioned, the first chapter, self-realization, has 20 slokas or paragraphs. The first paragraph, each and every line has 8 syllables or 8 words. Normally, if you look at a poetry, what happens is if it's 8 words in one line, it would have the same pattern. And it's a little easier to set a tune to. But in Ashtavakra Gita, the first line has 8, the second paragraph has 7, the third paragraph has 6, the fourth one has 10 words. And then it's so random, it's high, low, there is, apparently I couldn't find any reason why it is so. And then I realized it's so challenging. If I have a tune, if I have to create a tune for this, then I have to create totally different tunes for all those 20, because they are all in different meters. And then, we cannot sing all those things, we have to have some interludes in between. Even if we have like 10 interludes, 20 plus 10, 30 totally different tunes I have to make. I almost gave up. But then I thought, maybe if we keep trying, maybe someday I might be able to find it. And then my beautiful and smart wife, Sashi, she always used to teach me. So she kept teasing me that, you are saying that you are giving this up just because you can escape from me. So, surprisingly, something happened after a couple of months. I used to take one line, the first paragraph or second paragraph or something like that, and I just used to think about all the possible interpretations and read. And at one point in time, it just happened that in just like 35-40 minutes, I was able to compose a tune for all the first 10 paragraphs. It just happened in 35 minutes. And then I thought, okay, whatever happens, however long it takes, I'm not giving this up. I'm finishing for all 20. But at that time, there is another thing. As I compose, I realized something more. If you observe the composition on YouTube, if you see that, in the first 10 of the paragraphs, the composition and the poetry is very contemplative. It thinks this is that, it could be this, it could be that. It's very contemplative. It doesn't say anything with certainty. But after the 10th paragraph, the poetry is very confident. It says, this is the thing, this is how it is. It becomes bold. So at that time, when I realized it, I had already composed all 20, so I had to redo. From 11 to 12, I had to redo in such a way that the expression is not contemplative, but it is bold. That's when Pam mentioned correctly that it becomes serious. The music becomes serious at that point, because the music turns something into a certain thing. It's no more contemplative. So Ashtavakra has, I don't know who wrote this, it's attributed to Ashtavakra. So the beauty of the poetry is that it starts slowly, it starts with the contemplating mode, and then as it goes towards the 20th paragraph, it's very bold. It has no ambiguity, it has no uncertainty. I wanted that to reflect in the music. So that's how we had a beautiful, musical form for Ashtavakra Gita. And there are a couple of things where I had to intentionally change it. For example, some of the lines are so beautiful. So I'm just going to read one of those. Tvaya vyaptam idam vishvam tvayi protam yatartatah. So earlier, I had a different tune for this. But then, when I read this, to me, it sounded like, somebody jumping in a ladder and going up. Tvaya vyaptam idam vishvam tvayi protam yatartatah. So the words have been arranged so beautifully that one gets the image of something jumping from ladder to ladder and going up. And that's exactly the expression that I have tried to express in this song. So you would be able to listen now, after this, the whole band, live band is going to perform this, you will be able to listen to that. And then the other one I just wanted to highlight is, there is one sloka called the Sakharam. It talks about formlessness. And intentionally we have made that as formless. It would sound like a Chittaswaram if you know Carnatic music. So there is a strong correlation between what is mentioned in the lyrics and what kind of tune has been set to them. So once all of those things are done, the other experience was making a video. Sashi and myself, we sat together. We spoke to a lot of people who make videos, and then we wanted to make a video that closely resembles what is mentioned in this song. And one interesting experience is, we tried some things, For example, there is a sloka that says that, you are not bound by any class. You are not bound by any duties, right? For that particular sloka, the video would show a bird or an animal, releasing its claws and then flying away. So all those things are intentional. But we also made something else intentional, not many people would have observed. And I was waiting, who is going to come back and make a comment. I know that Venkat is not going to come back because Venkat listens to the music and anything related to music he would say, not on the video. The comment came from my 3-year-old son. As this is about, self-consciousness, self-realization, that the physical body is not as, it's about the consciousness, the mind. You will not see anybody, any human beings in the entire 13-minute video. No human beings. You will see birds, you will see from somebody's perspective, but you will not see any human beings. Very carefully edited out all the human beings from the video. Then my son, Adi, when he was watching it, he watched for like 5 minutes and then he asked, "Where's people?" I really want to thank my wife and family for letting me do this and helping me do this. I have never seen, my wife doesn't know music, and in my life I had never seen anyone who uses that to her advantage. I never realized it. She would say, she's like a binary, she would simply say whether this is good or bad, that's it. You can't talk to her, anything about it, that's it. She would say, I don't know about music, you can try to convince me but it's not good, she would say. So till date, all my compositions have been released only after she approves it. Thank you very much. And my parents and my sister, brother-in-law, Sashi's brother, and their family. So everybody has been so encouraging. And I want to talk about Ramesh. Extremely committed. He has a great voice. That kind of commitment is something that I never expected. We initially thought about bringing a professional singer and do it, and then I was not sure because this is set to a new raga, and this is classical. Every note has to be specific, and the expression has to be perfectly doing justification to Ashtavakra Gita. So when Ramesh met with me and he said, whatever it takes, I'm willing to do that. And we recorded that for about 3 months. And the effort that Ramesh has put in, I would say, is almost impossible thinking back. He has put his heart and soul into this project. Sometimes he would come to my house like 6:30 in the morning, get the notes, think about all the possible ways of singing it. He would go practice it. He would come back like 9:30 in the night. I don't know what's about 9:30, but he always comes by 9:30. 9:30 to 11:30 at 12 o'clock we will record. And I thought at middle of the way I thought maybe Ramesh is going to just leave me and run away. Because I used to say, Ramesh, sing this way, sing that way, do this, do that, this has to be higher, this has to be lower, all possible things. But he was so passionate about all those things. And every time I asked for something, he would give me more than that. Thank you very much, Ramesh. The other person I want to thank now is Kalyan. Where's Kalyan? Veena Kalyan. This has a lot of interludes because this is pan-Indian. I do not just want to use South Indian instruments. I wanted to use North Indian, South Indian. It's pan-Indian. And there are some things that I know are a little intricate when it comes to expression. Playing technically good is one thing, expression is another thing. And Kalyan was so passionate and he said, whatever it takes, let's do it. So we met the first time. The first 20 seconds of the prelude, that took about a couple of hours to take. But then Kalyan understood what is Ashtavakra Gita. He understood what is Swadhyaya. The next week we met. The entire rest of the portions were recorded in like just 30 minutes. And I was like, did something happen? He was on fire on that day. He was like, I just tell him the notes, I'm just telling him the notes in Carnatic music. And the very first time he would listen to that, but he would play those notes exactly as I had perceived in my mind. I don't know how it happened. And I asked him how it happened. He said, after we met last week, he went back and he started practicing the Swadhyaya Raga again and again and again. And he started doing some all-up in Swadhyaya Raga again and again. And then somehow he understood what is the beauty in that Raga. And that was amazing because you have something in your mind and you don't even express that. Just give the note, somebody else is able to play them. That's an amazing experience for me to record. Thank you. Now I want to talk about Ben, the clarinet player. And he is. So Ben comes from the Western classical background, and I cannot simply brand him clarinet player because he plays all types of saxophone, he plays all types of flutes, and he plays clarinet. For this Ashtavakra Gita, I wanted to use clarinet. And if you look at it for, I think, a couple of interludes, clarinet and veena, they get into a conversation. Veena is a South Indian instrument. It has a long history. The way how the gamakas, how the embellishments have evolved, it has its total history. And the way how in Western classical, how clarinet is played is totally different. And it's amazing to see how Ben's clarinet and the veena get into a conversation and you will not see any difference. In certain way, it is a kind of symbolic of Ashtavakra Gita. It's all one. Nothing is different. At some point in time, at somewhere, everything is same. It was so refreshing to hear a totally Carnatic background music and a Western classical music merge in a conversation, and nobody will see any difference. And there are some hard notes in that. We had 32nd note, 64th note, some crazy notes in that. And when again we recurred in couple of hours, everything was recurred in couple of hours. We shared the notes with him, came with his father, and once with his mother, and patiently waited for a couple of hours, but just one sitting. Those kind of things we normally see only in professional players, and in Raleigh area we are so gifted with so many musicians, part-time musicians and students who are so talented that we could make a professional album using part-time musicians here. How amazing is that? Thank you very much, Ben. Then the violin students, mischievous students. Varun, Ashwin, Renu, Danya on violin. Probably my students, extreme talent. The way they learn things, how quickly they grasp all the intricacies, and how quickly they play the bag. You all have a great career in music, even if it's part-time. And Sri on cello, he's going to play. So he was a little hesitant, but his father was like, no, he's good, I know him. He's pretty good. And he picked up pretty well. Now, while putting this this function together, of course, Ramesh is going to sing, but we wanted more people to sing, because singing and recording, you can sing for 20 seconds and then take your breath and then sing it again. But if you perform all those things, someone has to breathe, right? So Ramesh said, I want to breathe in between. So we want more people to come and sing. And then that's when Kripa came into help. She led the complete practice sessions with her friends. She brought in her friends and students, and she completely led. She never missed even one practice session. Every time we practiced. And then some of you might have heard the bhajans she sang. She has a great voice, a great grasp. She understood the composition very well, and she was also teaching to her friends. Thank you very much, Kripa. And the other singers we are also going to have today are Sharanya, Deepa Hari, Deepa Kupraman, Savita, and Ayush. Thanks to all. And the percussion plays a really important role in the overall composition. And we have Karthik on Mridangam and Balaji on Tabla. So, renowned musicians, they pick up very, very quickly. In fact, I was talking to Karthik, and I was a little nervous, because there are different passages that has to be played differently. Karthik said, I can do it. It's not a big deal. And on the last rehearsal that he came, he almost played whatever I had in my mind. So thanks to Karthik and Balaji. Kavin on piano. So I have been working with Kavin for the last maybe 4 or 5 years. At that time, Kavin was like this tall, and now he's like somewhere here. And similarly, his piano skill has also grown tremendously. If you know music, if you see the chords used in this composition are a little tricky. It's not standard chords, it's all a little unusual chords. And Kevin was so comfortable to play all those things, he picked up very easily. Thank you. And then we have Aman on bass guitar. Again, if you see, there are some tricky notes in bass guitar. Sometimes it goes really fast. Sometimes it's not even possible to play on a bass guitar. Normal bass guitar, it's not possible to play because the notes are so fast and the strings are thick. It takes a lot of some time. There's a slow response from the guitars. But Aman was able to pick those things up. Thanks, Aman. I want to also thank the volunteers. You guys are my strength. When we have to put this together, the volunteers that we have today, they all came forward. They wanted to help. I didn't even ask anybody. They came forward. They said, "This is my strength. Can I do it?" For example, Bashir. Bashir is so good in videography, and he came forward and said, "Any help that you need, I'm ready to do that." Thanks, Bashir. And we have Veena for the still photography. I don't know where she is. Thank you. The stage decoration is by Mahamanikam. Again, I didn't pick or choose anything. She asked me, "What do you want?" I said, something related to music, probably some Indian accents. That's it. You see all those things on stage. Thanks, Maha. And I want to thank the other volunteers, Ravi, Mayil and Anita for making the food arrangements, Patrick and Shanmugaraj for making other arrangements as well, and Rajmohan Manikam. So, that's all I have. Thank you very much. Now let's listen to the band playing the composition live. Thank you.
वैराग्यं च कथं प्राप्तं एतद्ब्रूहि मम प्रभो कथं ज्ञानम् अवाप्नोति कथं मुक्तिर्भविष्यति वैराग्यं च कथं प्राप्तं एतद्ब्रूहि मम प्रभो इच्छसि चेतात् विषयान् विषयन् त्यज क्षमार्जवधया तोष सत्यं पीयूषवभज मुक्तिम् इच्छसि चेतात् विषयान् विषयन् त्यज क्षमार्जवधया तोष सत्यं पीयूषवभज कथं ज्ञानम् अवाप्नोति येषां साक्षिणमात्मानं रूपं विधिमुक्तये नाकृतिनजरं नाग्निर्नामायुर्गौरवाः येषां साक्षिणमात्मानं रूपं विधिमुक्तये कथं ज्ञानमवाप्नोति यदि देहं प्रकृत्या चिते विश्राम्यतेष्टसि अधुनैवा सुखे शान्ता बन्धमुक्तो भविष्यति यदि देहं प्रकृत्या चिते विश्राम्यतेष्टसि अधुनैवा सुखे शान्ता बन्धमुक्तो भविष्यसि न त्वं विद्यादिकवर्णो नाश्रमी नाशगोचर असंतोषी निराकारो विश्वसाक्षी सुखी भवानत्वं विद्यादिकवर्णो नाश्रमी नाशगोचर असंतोषी निराकारो विश्वसाक्षी सुखी भवानत्वं ज्ञानं भवानुते धर्मो सुखं दुःखं मानसारीरते विभो धर्मो सुखं दुःखं मानसारीरते विभो न कर्तासि न भोक्तासि भूतायेवासि धर्मो सुखं दुःखं मानसारीरते विभो न कर्तासि न भोक्तासि भूतायेवासि दृष्टासि सर्वस्य मुक्ताध्यायोऽसि सर्वदाय दृष्टायं पश्यसि देवो दृष्टासि सर्वस्य मुक्ताध्यायोऽसि सर्वदाय दृष्टायं पश्यसि कर्तेऽहं मानवा कृष्णादिदं कर्तेऽहं मानवा कृष्णादिदं शिखराहं कर्तेति विश्वासामृतं दीपा सुखी भवा कर्तेऽहं मानवा कृष्णादिदं शिखराहं कर्तेति विश्वासामृतं दीपा सुखी भवा अहं कर्णं भवामूर्ति एको विशुद्धबोधोऽहं गिरिनिश्चयवर्णीनां विश्वाय ज्ञानशोकसुखी भव एको विशुद्धबोधोऽहं गिरिनिश्चयवर्णीनां विश्वाय ज्ञानशोकसुखी भव यत्र विश्वं इदं भाति कल्पितं आनन्दामरमानन्दां बोधस्त्वं सुखं च यत्र विश्वं इदं भाति कल्पितं आनन्दामरमानन्दां बोधस्त्वं सुखं च कथं ज्ञानं भवामि किं वदन्ति सत्येयं यावत् साधनेर्भवे मुक्ताभिमानि मुक्तो हि भक्तो बद्धाभिमन्यते किं वदन्ति सत्येयं यावत् साधनेर्भवे आत्मा साक्षी एको मुक्तचित्ते शांतो प्रमाद संसारमानि आत्मा साक्षी एको मुक्तचित्ते शांतो प्रमाद संसारमानि कथं मुक्तिर्भविष्यसि निराकारं तु निशलं एतत्तत्त्वोपदेशेन न पुनर्भवा सम्भवा साकारम् अनृतं विधि निराकारं तु निशलं एतत्तत्त्वोपदेशेन न पुनर्भवा सम्भवा कथं ज्ञानम् अवाप्नोति यथैवादर्शमध्यस्थे रूपेऽन्तपरितस्तु स तथैवास्मिन् शरीरेऽन्तपरिता परमेश्वर यथैवादर्शमध्यस्थे रूपेऽन्तपरितस्तु स तथैवास्मिन् शरीरेऽन्तपरिता परमेश्वर एकं सर्वगतं व्योम बहिरन्तर् यथागते नित्यं निरन्तरं ब्रह्म सर्वभूतागणे तथा एकं सर्वगतं व्योम बहिरन्तर् यथागते नित्यं निरन्तरं ब्रह्म सर्वभूतागणे तथा बहिरन्तर् यथागते